Welcome to the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast, where we don't take from insurance companies. Here are your hosts, Mr. Jordan Comstock and Mr. Ben Tuine.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Say No to PPO's podcast series. This is the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast. My name's Ben Tuine, got Jordan Comstock. Jordan, what's up, man? You just got back from Prescott,
Ben?
Right? Prescott? Is it pronounced Prescott or Prescott? I don't know how they pronounce it up there.
It's Prescott. They all made fun of me when I started saying Prescott. But yeah, just got back with the Mark Costi's mastermind. It was a blast. Had so much fun. Met a lot of Mark Costi's team down there and spoke to a lot of the members in the mastermind group. And I presented about in-house membership programs. So it was a fun time, man. I wish you could have come there. It would have been fun.
I wish I could. I have family. My dad is moving back to American Samoa on Wednesday.
Oh,
and
really?
I had to help him move a bunch of stuff out of a storage unit and into a shipping van. And then I spent part of my Saturday fishing out two model airplanes that one my father-in-law crashed, the other one I crashed. And we mounted a camera to another plane and was nose diving down in the areas because our drone is on the way. We don't fly drones, but we realized that we need to get a drone that can carry at least 10 pounds. So we got one that's stuck on an island in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of grass, and then another one that's just stuck in 15-foot grass. It's just so hard to get around there. So and that's what I did on Saturday. It was kind of fun. But
nice, man.
Don't recommend crashing a model airplane. Those things aren't cheap.
Those are expensive, yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Folks, we got a great guest with us today. We have Dr. Roy Shelburne on the call with us. Did I pronounce that right, Dr. Roy?
You did, yeah, and a nice segue from crashing there to what I crashed. It's all good.
Now, I'm not going to tell the listeners about your story, but I want you to go through that. But let me just, is it okay if I read some of the background that you have on your website? Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely.
So Dr. Shelburne in 1981 graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University School of Dentistry with honors. After graduation, he opened his practice back home in his grandfather's warehouse store building and practiced there for 27 years. He's been the past president of the Southwest Virginia Dental Society and has volunteered for Virginia's various MOM projects across the state. Dr. Shelburne has also been short-term missionary with the Baptist Medical Mission International to Honduras, California.
Awesome. And
so some dentists may, the interesting thing on your website, it says that some dentists may fear litigation, but few worry about going to prison. Dr. Shelburne became aware of that he was a target of an investigation when he in October 24th, 2013. That's when the FBI broke down his back door of his office and confiscated all of his records. Over the course of the next 3 years, every aspect of his life was subject to the closest scrutiny. Dr. Roy was indicted October of 2006 and was found guilty of healthcare fraud, racketeering, and money laundering in March 2008. He was sentenced to 24 months in federal prison and was ordered to pay fines and restitution. Dr. Roy was released from federal custody May 2010 and then served a 3-year supervised probationary period. During the investigation, as well as in the preparation for and during the trial, it became apparent that his records, billing, and coding systems were faulty, and ignorance is no excuse. The court stated that this action was intended to send a message to the healthcare community that Dr. Shelburne has taken that statement literally. Dr. Shelburne has now focused on his efforts towards the education of others to prevent the same thing from happening to him, happening to those doctors that are currently practicing out there. His message is that it is possible to implement systems that can form a defensive, systematic approach. As a speaker, consultant, and writer, Dr. Shelburne specializes in record keeping and business systems that protect and defend the healthcare practitioner. Wow, Dr. Shelburne, you're the second doctor that I know that spent some time in prison. You know, there's always this confusion. What's the difference between jail and prison? For the most part, jail, either a minor felony, but mainly just misdemeanors. And then when you spend any prison time, it's usually more serious felonies that are involved to get you to that state of incarceration. We would love to hear your story because we hear about all the good that you're doing in the industry, your work with Dr. Charles Blair, the articles that you produce in his newsletters that I do get. I do subscribe to that, and I read them, and I enjoy them. And I heard about you back in 2011, I believe, a story that came out. I think even Dr. Charles Blair even spoke about that at one of the meetings that I was attending. And it's just an honor to have you on the phone today, that you would come out and open and have this freely available to the public of dentists that are out there or other healthcare providers in an effort to steer them down a different path that doesn't follow your exact path leading up to the 2010 mark. What happened? I would love to hear your story on what happened.
I'm so curious. I'm so curious right now.
Like I said, I was practiced in my grandfather's hardware store building since 1981, had actually flown to San Francisco, California to the American Dental Association meeting in October of 2003, had listened to Rudolph Giuliani speak, and during his presentation, my phone began to vibrate. I didn't notice it. I was so deeply listening to what Giuliani was saying that the person next to me did notice my phone was vibrating, elbowed me and said, I think your phone's vibrating. I opened the phone, and it was my wife who was calling. I identified her, but rather than answering the phone and kind of interrupting that presentation, I closed my phone, and after Giuliani finished, I called my wife. She had gone to visit my daughter, who was at Virginia Tech at the time. And she shared with me that James, our custodian, had called her to let her know that the FBI had come to my office. They had battered down the back door, and they were carrying out records.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not a good day.
No,
I talked to my wife for a few minutes and tried to reassure her that it was going to be okay, never believing it would be, because things like that just don't happen.
Right.
It's not cause. So after I spoke with her, I was kind of at a loss for what to do, so I called my office. It's a Friday. None of the staff would have been there. But somebody answered the phone. The voice on the other end of the phone said, "Hello?" I said, "Hello, who is this?" And they said, "I am an FBI agent. You are the subject of a healthcare fraud investigation. We're gathering evidence to determine whether or not we will indict you."
Oh, my gosh.
Not a good day.
No.
I went back to my hotel, packed up, got on a plane, flew home, and I was there probably 9:30 that evening, drove past my office, and it was surrounded by crime scene tape. And multiple black FBI vehicles were parked around it, and I watched officers carry boxes out of my office and into their vehicles. I was investigated for the course of the next 3 years.
Oh.
They had looked for the previous 6 years to determine what I had done, and learned a lot in the process in terms of the investigation, the things that they were looking at. And then after the indictment 3 years later, and then the year and a half after the prosecution, I got a PhD in what I did do that I shouldn't have, and what I didn't do and should have. So there was a huge learning curve. The county that I practiced in, my home, was one of the poorest in the state of Virginia, so over 90% of the individuals under 18 years old had Medicaid, so had a busy Medicaid practice. The investigation, like I said, covered 6 years, and over that 6 years, for the services that I provided my Medicaid patients, the amount I was paid over that 6-year period was about $3.5 million. Mm-hmm. And of the $3.5 million that I was paid over that 6-year period, the amount that they determined that I got that I wasn't entitled to was $17,899.57. So that's 0.05% of the amount I got. And although we were able to go back and show that there was work that I had provided that should have been billed for and didn't bill for, could have been paid for in excess of that amount, it didn't make any difference. Had to be a jury trial, so the jury's never made aware of the amount. They only determine guilt or innocence. Mm-hmm. So the amount that I'd gotten was determined during sentencing. And one of the things that I learned, I always thought if I got monies that I wasn't entitled to, that I could pay it back, and any interest or penalties. I was never given that option. The best option I was ever given to settle was 3 years in prison and a restitution of $350,000.
Wow.
One of the biggest things that I learned is the definition of intent to defraud.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that you intended to defraud if you sent a claim for a patient you never saw for a service that you never did. Certainly that is considered. Yeah. But from the legal point of view, intent also includes what's defined as blind disregard. That is, if you continue to do the same thing the same way and make mistakes without having systems to identify and correct those errors, that is considered blind disregard and legally intent to defraud. So
wow.
For all intents and purposes, mistakes are not mistakes unless you have systems to identify and correct those.
Wow.
Spent a lot of times in preparation for the trial, and like I said, I was indicted almost exactly 3 years afterward. Spent a year and a half preparing for the trial. I was one charge of healthcare fraud, and the prosecution brought 118 instances that could have been interpreted by the jury as healthcare fraud. So they had 118 attempts to be able to prove my guilt or innocence, and I was charged with racketeering, money laundering, and structuring as well.
Wow. Wait, let me see if I get that right. My mind is about to explode. All of that for $17,000 for 0.05%.
17,000
of what you billed during that period that they investigated you. Did I get that right?
You got that right, yes, sir.
Holy
that was, like I said, of $3.5 million.
You ended up
$17,890.57.
And then you ended up paying $357,000 back in restitution.
Correct.
And then
no. As far as in restitution, the $17,899.57 I paid back, plus because I was charged with racketeering and money laundering, the 3 years later after I was arrested, they confiscated everything I owned, as well as my children's vehicles and the bank accounts as well. So they kept all that because I was found guilty. So they kept that once they liquidated everything that was available.
So they treated you like a drug dealer, basically.
Yeah, it's racketeering and money laundering. Those statutes were established to punish organized crime for mafia leaders and people of that nature. But it can be interpreted that it can apply to any group of individuals who have come together and have been paid something that's inappropriate. There's a case in Texas, an oral surgeon. He didn't have an office of his own, but he did rotate through 6 different offices in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He was arrested for health care fraud. His business manager was arrested, and his lead assistant was arrested as well. And the 6 doctors who provide this doctor's space they were indicted as well.
Wow.
So the racketeering and money laundering charge allow everybody in the practice to be named in the action if they want to do that. In this action in Texas, just by the way, they removed the indictment against the staff members in exchange for their testimony against their doctor.
Wow.
You know what? I'm at a loss of words. My dad's an attorney. He spent years working for as a prosecutor in a small tiny island called American Samoa. And he's of the belief that if you've committed a crime, you should be punished for it. Mm-hmm. But I really don't see a crime here. Like, I know that there's on paper that they view this the way the laws are written, but I'm at the same time I'm wondering if somebody was up for a re-election, you just got caught up in the mix, because in on your website it says the court stated that this action was intended to send a message to the healthcare community. Essentially,
yeah, that's interesting.
It looks like you were just randomly targeted. I mean, what precipitated all of this? Were there any red flag issues? I know practices, and I'm not going to throw any of them under the bus right now, but I know many that I don't affiliate with that have stolen and taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Medicaid system. You made a mistake in overbilling $17,000, underbilled on many other areas that would have made up the difference. But that $17,000 versus the $3 million, I hardly see a habit that would cause a DA or anybody else to prosecute you. So in my opinion, just with the limited information that you shared with me, I'm leaning more towards the fact that they just randomly selected you and they found cause to use you as an example, or am I wrong there?
From what I understand, and the whistleblower, there's a whistleblower protection statute. So the person who's making the complaint or persons are protected, so you'll never know who they are. It was, from what I gathered, a complaint to the Fraud Division in the Western District of Virginia that initiated the action, and just like a complaint to the Board of Dentistry, they initiate an evaluation. They start an investigation. Generally, if it's a Medicaid case, it'll come through the Medicaid office. There'll be a doctor that's non-compliant, and they, will generally attempt to make corrective action with that dentist. But in my case, it circumvented that. And in fact, the Durrell Dental, who's now DentaQuest, who administered Virginia Medicaid, they did 2 audits after the search and seizure. The first one was truly random, and the second one they looked at the 16 patients I'd done the most comprehensive work for. And I have a copy of the facts that I showed during my presentations, but Durrell, bottom line was, they said, we don't have a problem. We don't see that there's an issue, and we didn't find anything different than we've seen in any other offices of our doctors that practice. So I actually was able to see Medicaid till the day I surrendered my license. They didn't have a problem with that.
Wow.
So that was a little different. The prosecution's reaction to that was, well, you just don't have the expertise. We have to be able to go the depths we've gone to determine this man is committing healthcare fraud. Wow. Interestingly enough, I was in prison. I got the renewal for my American Dental Association dues and the Virginia dues. So I sent a letter back to the association. I said, we understand where I am, and I certainly can't afford this, so I'm going to have to let my American Dental Association dues lapse. I got a letter back from Terry Dickinson, who was the state director, and said, no, sir, as long as you care to be a member, we'll comp your dues, and you'll be able to be an active member. And, since the incarceration and the release, I've worked very hard to not only to share my story, but to learn about the industry as well, to share that information. My hope is I'm the last dental professional that goes to jail, but I've now been recognized as a subject matter expert by the American Dental Association, have a great opportunity to be able to travel around the country, hoping to keep other guys and ladies out of the same predicament. So, although what happened to me was professionally as bad as something can happen, I'm in a good place. My license was revoked as a result of the conviction. Was able to, in Virginia, the mandatory minimum period is 3 years, so I was able to apply for my license again in 2011, and the board met in December of 2011. My license has been restored, so I'm a wet-fingered dentist again.
Awesome. Nice, man.
It's like, a lot of people say, well, how could that happen in a country like this? And honestly, it can happen to anybody. We sent the same allegations and records to about 15 different dentists to try to identify someone to be able to give expert testimony on my behalf. And every one of them that reviewed the records came back and said, there's not a thing you've done that hasn't happened in my office before.
That's a question I was going to ask, is that if you audit a practice that does $3 million, of course you're going to find some errors in billing. Right?
Oh yeah.
You do.
The difference is the level of intent, the level of the mistake. There are some practices that are doing it in pure ignorance. There are other practices that are doing it intentionally and knowingly. And to me, the intent and knowing, and the sad thing is I know many practice owners who have lost their licenses or have been sued or have absorbed major fines as a result of like an office manager engaging in embezzlement, throwing the doctor under the bus, claiming that it was sexual harassment
under his direction or her direction.
Under his or her direction. And then by the way, he grabbed me here and there. And I've seen doctors lose their licenses. And then one doctor in particular who used to practice in Colorado moved down to Arizona. We helped him get re-credentialed with all the insurance carriers once he was able to get an Arizona license, and did that with great success. And then looking at his case, I thought, this looks awfully similar to so many that I've seen throughout my career. Well, that office manager that got him in trouble for sexual harassment and all that stuff, embezzlement, overbilling, she wasn't charged with embezzlement, but her next employer was smart and said, well, she's coming from a practice where a doctor lost his license. I'm just going to be very careful. And he started taking very good record, and hired a forensic accountant to make sure that the books were not being cooked. And long story short, ended up finding out that she was stealing money, just like she was during the previous three offices that the cops initiated an investigation and found that, wow, we got all these dentists in trouble. It wasn't their fault. It was this office manager's fault. But they, for that Arizona doctor, he never was able to get his records expunged. And that's the sad thing, is that they carry this because I guess the law looks at them and thinks, and maybe Dr. Rowe, you can shed some light on this, that, well, you're the practice owner. You're ultimately responsible for what goes on in your practice. So therefore you're going to carry a burden of that guilt forever. You know, the records will reflect and show that. And that's what happened to a few of the dentists that I know. They just got burned, and, you know, to this day, they're still burned. They still have that conviction on their record, although it wasn't ultimately their fault. It was just poor management, you know. But
yeah, it depends on your definition of intent. Like I said, you're the business owner. You bear the responsibility of making sure that the systems are working properly and that errors are identified and corrected as necessary. There's actually a 7-step compliance program that is outlined by the government in terms of it's mandated, although I've been in a number of offices, hundreds as a matter of fact. I've only seen one that actually had that in place prior to consulting with them. And it's considered mandatory, and that takes the blind disregard off the table. Their system of being able to review records. It's an innocent mistake if you work to make sure that you identify errors and to correct them. If you ignore them and don't have systems to be able to work those and to identify and correct errors, that's considered blind disregard and intent to defraud.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
How do you find that 7-step compliance? Is that available readily on your website or other government websites?
Yeah, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and forward a copy of that. It's in a PDF, and you can share that with your listeners if they email or need that information. Be happy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, what we'll do, since you're the expert on that, if anybody's interested, I mean, just know that Dr. Shelburne has a business that consults and helps doctors. Truly, I can say this truthfully, help you stay out of jail, because I know several that have gone, well, 2 that have gone to prison and several that have not gone to jail, but have been stuck with felony convictions.
Wow.
You know, they didn't spend any prison time, but they were put under heavy probation and lost their licenses and had to start all over again. And this is just like, I like what your website says. It's, you know, ignorance is an excuse, but that was the case for everybody I knew. It was just ignorance. They had no idea that these things were going on in their practices, but in the end, they were the ones that spent the time. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what else do you coach by way of record keeping, which I think is very important? And talking about coding and insurance stuff that we deal with from time to time, have you seen anybody get in trouble from insurance carriers directly, or is most of the punishment coming from the government?
From like Medicaid, Medicare?
Yeah, insurance companies will prosecute, but the numbers need to make sense for them. It's going to be a huge amount with a doctor who is a heavy hitter and doing it inappropriate. But what I do see is a lot of requests for reimbursement. For example, x-rays are a big issue with insurance carriers. I think we take them too often and that we don't follow through the way we're supposed to. So number one, an x-ray is taken when it is medically necessary, not when the insurance is going to pay for it. So you need to establish medical necessity. The FDA and the ADA in 2008 updated in 2012 a document that is great. It outlines specifically the criteria needed for the radiographs, as well as they have a grid that identifies patient age and some of the risk factors, and it'll give you in that grid for that patient presenting with that type of risk what would be considered standard in terms of radiographs needed to be taken. Now that's not set in stone. The doctor is, of course, it's subject to their interpretation which x-rays are taken when, but that's a good baseline. And number one, establish medical necessity for the radiograph. Number two, that they are taken and that they are diagnostic. There's a particular dentist that I had worked with, had been contacted by the insurance carrier, and this is basically the scenario. The dentist was sending off a claim for a crown on tooth number 2, sent a PA with the insurance and a narrative justifying the need for treatment. The PA that they sent in on number 2 was not a very good one. It wasn't diagnostic at all. So the individual who got that and reviewed the claim looked at that and said, I wonder if they think this is diagnostic, what's going to happen when we do an audit of the practice? So they did an audit, 15 charts, reviewed the radiographs for those 15 patients, and 22% of the radiographs that were taken were not diagnostic. They weren't good films. So what they did with the 22%, they went back for 6 years, looked at the amount that they had paid this doctor for all the radiographs, and asked for 22% of the payments they'd made back, which resulted in a fine of, or a recoupment of $73,000.
Wow.
That's what we see happening. So radiographs, as far as documentation, 1, medical necessity. Number 2, review them and make sure that they are diagnostic. Otherwise, if they're not, don't bill for them. And the third, there needs to be a documentation note made that the doctor actually read them.
Wow.
There are only 2 states in the nation that hygienists can practice independently and can diagnose. That's in Idaho and Oregon, and they have to have a special certificate. So every other state or every other area in the United States, the doctor is the only one that can determine medical necessity for those radiographs.
Right.
And practices should not have a standing, okay, we're going to take these every year, we're going to take these every 3 years. It's only based on that patient's need. So documentation, number 1, medical necessity for, based on that patient's risk factors and the doctor's determination of the need for those radiographs. Number 2, review them and make sure they're diagnostic, not cone cut, not overlapped with bite wings. Make sure that with the PAs it would pass if you were doing a proficiency in dental school or hygiene school or assistant school. Those are billable. And number 3, that the x-rays were read by the doctor, and any findings as a result of those readings. That would justify, that would cover the documentation for and the justification for the treatment, as well as justification for reimbursement by a carrier.
Yeah, I like that.
Wow.
I have a follow-up question to that. So,
Sure.
Jordan and I do quite a bit of speaking across the country surrounding insurance-related issues, in-house membership plans. The question that often comes up is, so when you have a new patient that has a particular insurance plan where a new patient exam, typically if you bill out a panel and 4 bite wings, which is what a lot of doctors do in their practices. You bill out that combination, it gets downgraded to FMX. So some practices say, well, the way we do it is we do the panel and x-ray, panel and 4 bite wings, but we only bill the panel during the first visit, and then in the six months, we'll take another series of 4 bite wings and then bill that at that time. What are your thoughts on that? I haven't received a feedback from somebody of your position that knows the ins and outs of what's right, what's wrong, how to stay out of jail, how to stay out of the insurance audits. When it comes to that type of diagnostic, X-rays and such, what's appropriate with that example, and what's inappropriate with that example as well?
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts. You bill for what you do always, and many of the carriers will require, even though they may not be reimbursing it, that they are made aware of that service that you provided. So caveat number 1, be aware of the contract and the responsibility you have, especially if you're a PPO plan. If you're not in network, there's not as many handcuffs and restrictions. Staging it so that you change the date so it's reimbursable is considered fraudulent. That insurance claim that you send in should accurately reflect the service that was provided on the date that it's billable. And it's only billable, you need to know what the insurance plan's incurred liability date is. That's a long phrase, but that means that most plans will have established the date it can be billed on. If you're in network, I've yet to see a contract that says you can do it on start date. All of them will specifically indicate on delivery date or when you finish the service.
Right.
There are a few private insurances will let you do it on start date, but that's very rare. So if you're thinking you would like to do it on start date when you can, that's another one of those, the information you're going to need when you get verification of benefits. Ask the question, when is the incurred liability date on this plan?
Yeah.
So the date needs to be accurate. The amount that you charge the insurance company must be accurate. So if you're giving cash discounts to patients, the amount that's on the insurance claim should be the discounted amount, the amount that you've agreed with the patient to accept as payment in full. That insurance claim, all areas need to be accurate. So the amount, the billing, the date, the provider of service, that needs to be accurate as well. Another area I see where people kind of dance the line is practices that have new associates and they come and go. That new associates come in and they are in network and they want the patient's treatment be considered in network, but that new provider is not credentialed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the billing person will be advised to use the owner doctor, the credentials doctor's name as provider of service, and submit it that way until the other doctor becomes credentialed. There again, that's a fraudulent submission. You've misrepresented the person who actually provided the service.
Wow. Man, seems like it gets complicated sometimes.
It's very complicated. And, there's all kinds of moving parts as well because there are different types of plans. There's a conventional insurance plan, and then there are self-funded plans, and the regulations and rules vary because the self-funded plans are under federal guidelines, and the
is that like
Medicare
Medicare?
are under state guidelines.
Yeah, okay.
Now, Medicare, Medicaid always is under the umbrella of federal regulation.
Federal. Mm-hmm.
The conventional insurances they vary according to how they're administered. So it depends on whether it's self-funded. That's technically called an ERISA plan, or whether it's a conventional insurance plan. State law is the law that regulates the in-state regular insurance plans. So lots of moving parts, a lot of moving parts. Confusion there, yeah.
So I have a question for you. I want to know what types of services you provide for dentists to help them, understand this whole concept of not going to jail or prison, that is.
Yeah, if it has to do with documentation, the billing and coding, I can help with those. As far as implementing a compliance program, can do that. If you need audits to be able to figure out if there are areas that you can improve, I can do that as well. So it's soup to nuts, and it's one of those things I try to customize it per practice. There's some practices may be doing one area very well and they don't need help with that, but there may be another that may not be doing so well. So I do a complimentary, like a 100 feet observation into the practice, and help to diagnose maybe the areas where there's the biggest risk, and then provide service that way. So it's not one size fits all. Some practices will be doing a great job documentation-wise, but they're not. The billing coding piece is kind of hurting, and just the opposite, and then you get blended areas. So like I said, I like to, rather than, all our practices are different, so I try to customize what I do for them to give them the biggest help to keep them out of trouble and to make sure that they maintain the proper compliance.
Yeah, it looks like you have, basically, I'm on your website right now, and it says you have like a a la carte consulting services. So so that's why you can customize it to each practice. Very cool.
Right.
Oh, sorry, Ben, are you wanting to say something?
No, I was just going to say, in terms of candidates, so some of the listeners might be thinking, am I a candidate for something like this or not?
That's a good question. Earlier
this year, I get an email from a client or former client up in the state of Washington, just emails me and says, I got such and such insurance carrier. They took a look at 20 claims, and now they're demanding $56,000 in reimbursements.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he's like, I think they're lying to me. They're engaging in, they didn't audit the entire 2-year period that they're claiming, but they're saying, in our estimation, you owe us $56,000. And this practice, they want to challenge the insurance company's assessment, because what they're also saying is that if you don't pay us this $56,000, we're just going to take it out of the checks that we pay you for treatment that you bill us. And,
wow.
and this is a practice that crosses their T's and dots their I's.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would not be good.
Yeah. If you're dotting the T, then you're in big trouble.
Yeah, that might not be good, the first one.
So Dr. Roy here. So this is a practice that feels like, gosh, we do a great job, and we just feel like the insurance carrier is abusing us. How do we know if they're telling the truth or not? Like, what recourse do they have? Can they hire an attorney?
That's a great question.
No, you can always challenge those, and that's something I've been successful at helping to defend practices as well in particular areas, to do the review and to determine if their assessment is correct or not. There are actually dentists who have maybe done those audits, and they are paid based on the amount that they find.
Right.
So as far as being able to refute those findings, it's important that you find an independent individual to be able to review and say, no, in fact, this was done correctly. And you can challenge those audits, and in many cases you can get most, if not all of it, overturned.
That's good to know, because we've been referring to healthcare attorneys that have been able to help, but that's I don't know what typical auditing costs in dentistry. We've been looking for a business to help our clients with that, because we get them all the time where it's just a random audit, and then the insurance carrier doesn't produce solid evidence that the practice does indeed owe a $56,000 reimbursement back to them. They're just saying, in our estimation, we're guessing that it's $56,000. You know, and
and by the way, there's no such thing as a random audit.
You know what? I agree with you.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a random audit. The one thing that insurance companies share among one another is submissions data. So there's a company that actually they report all their submissions data to. That company provides a bell curve of doctor submissions, and they profile every single doctor. So the doctor in the middle of the bell curve is Dr. Average. One standard deviations away, you might get a letter and say, oh, by the way, you're doing more crowns than the average dentist in your particular area. 2 standard deviations away, and you may get that audit. 3 or 4 standard deviations, they may start a fraud dossier on you. If it's blatant enough and the number's large enough, they can prosecute as well. So there's no such thing as a random audit. Something will have triggered it in the submissions that they've submitted.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jordan.
Go ahead, Ben.
You first.
I was just going to say, so they basically have a system that kind of captures all the data from the dentists, and then they categorize those people. Wow, that's really interesting.
Right. For example, they'll know how many scaling and root planings you do as opposed to the other practices in your area. Surgical extractions as opposed to conventional extractions. The number of core buildups you do before your crowns as other doctors. So they compare you to everybody else. And like I said, if you're Dr. Average, you're all good. But if you're doing your percentage is higher than what they expect, depending on the standard deviations from normal, the action that they take can be commensurate to what they determine.
You know, that's interesting, because I know I hear this all the time. Doctors saying, well, I don't bill the buildups anymore because they just never get covered. So I don't want to deal with the write-off in my system. And I think that's not correct. I mean, if you're performing a buildup and it qualifies according to the CDT definition of a buildup, you should always be billing that buildup.
Yeah, you know, I agree.
Do you want to know the magic word?
What's it? Yeah. Retention.
The magic retention. Yep. Exactly. For example, when people call on their claims, they probably notice that the people that they speak to now don't necessarily speak English very well. That's all farmed out of the country, and those people who are processing those claims have a list of magic words that they look for in the narrative, and if the narrative indicates that without the core buildup, the tooth would not be able to retain the crown, and include a photo and a radiograph. I would do a photo prior to treatment, photo once all the old restorations taken out in the areas of decay, so it'll give them an idea of what you have remaining, and then take a photo once the core buildup's done. Those will almost always be paid unless the carrier has an exemption where they say they never pay for it.
Yeah, that's
but like I said, the magic word is retention.
I like that. When Tessina, we have a guest that comes on who does some work for us from time to time. Her name is Tessina, and she said the same thing. And the interesting thing is that she doesn't get any denials on the buildups, whereas a practice that's close to her that we know very well, almost every single buildup it gets denied because exactly what you said.
They don't use the word retention.
Yeah. Yeah.
They also, the insurance companies will test the waters as well. Sometimes they'll just deny it for the sake of denying it, because most practices don't push.
Right.
If they don't stand their ground and they don't have the documentation necessary. Everybody's profiled within the plans as well, so they have a pretty good idea of what this doctor's like. So if they have one that sticks to their guns and does the audits and enlist the help of the patients by having them complain to HR so that there's pressure from that point as well, the spigot kind of gets opened. So like I said, don't give up too quickly.
Yeah, I've been saying that for so many years, just people that I know that used to work for insurance carriers, and they sign non-competes to disclose what goes on behind the insurance doors, and
behind the curtain.
they would hint to me that, hey, these offices actually get profiled. Each of them, the insurance carrier knows exactly what the personality traits are, and they know practices that don't appeal, and so you'll see more denials in certain practices, and it's the ones that push back. Those are red flagged in the sense that if it's legitimate, that they're fighting back. Like Tessina's office, for instance, Tessina, she gets the insurance commissioner to bulldog the insurance carriers and force them to not delay claims. And once information is submitted right the first time around, that's when we expect to get paid. And so she's already at that level. So her practice, for the most part, is not treated the same way as the others that are immediately around their practice. And I've heard that for years and years and years, that each practice has a profile on the insurance side. And, if you're...
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
It is.
No, I actually I'm a member of the AADC, the American Association of Dental Consultants. Those aren't the consultants that go into practices. It's the consultants who work for the insurance company and actually review claims. They have a yearly meeting. I always go to that. And the NADP, the National Association of Dental Plans. And those are the insurance meetings. Those are where they come together. And I like being a fly on the wall, listening to some of the comments. And this is where you learn some pretty good information about the areas of concern, some of the areas that they feel are being abused by dentists, and, you react appropriately. So knowing what's behind the curtain is pretty important.
What's the National Dental Plans? Is that what you just said?
NADP, the National Association of Dental Plans, and the AADC, the American Association of Dental Consultants.
We're going to join both of those.
Yeah.
I think
AMDC, is that what you said?
AADC, the American Association of Dental Consultants.
Oh yeah, that's the one I was joining. Yeah, I'm getting ready to join that one.
Yeah, there's I know members of both of those organizations, and they always report back to me just things that the dental offices can do to improve, to steer clear of all the denials. And they're very, very helpful. I think often we look at least the dentists that just do the business, the practice of dentistry, and then those that are members of these organizations, they come back with great insight on how, not necessarily how to get around or how to abuse or skirt around. It's just how to do your best dentistry ethically, how to bill ethically, and knowing exactly what needs to be included in each of those narratives that you have to send out to the insurance company in an effort to avoid the 2 or 3 appeal process that many practices see.
So I have one more.
You also need to be careful in terms of those narratives as well. So this may or may not happen in dental practice, but in my world it did. I would diagnose the need for a crown on a patient. It would go to the person who was going to do the billing for that, and they didn't have the necessary information in the clinical record, so they come find me. It's like, Dr. Shelburne, Miss Smith came in, you said she needed a crown, what's the issue? And I would just, mesial-buccal cusp tooth number 3 was fractured. There was a recurrent decay around a large existing amalgam that was 2/3 of the tooth. You need to remove all that to be able to restore the tooth to function. And she would be writing furiously and put all that on the document to the insurance carrier. But what is the legal justification for the treatment? What document should that be included in the clinical record?
Yeah.
So the insurance companies, if in the event that you're audited, they're going to look at the claim form and go, oh, this is beautifully described here on the claim form. But when they audit, they're going to look at your clinical record.
It's not there.
And if the same information is not in the clinical record, they're going to ask for the money back, because that would be the ultimate justification for that crown that you provided. So there again, it's going to take a lot of education. If there are things that can be missed if you're not very careful. But if the staff is trained appropriately, that person who made that entry on the claim form could also make that entry on the clinical record of the patient as well. So it does mirror one another. And those are just some of the things that practices need to be aware of to be able to justify that service that they provided in a way that makes it very clear it was medically necessary and that was done appropriately.
I like that.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like it too. And you help, I'm assuming you help practices organize systems to kind of track these and get better at those in their practice. So
yes, sir.
Very cool. Back to the you mentioned the NADP, was it?
National Association of Dental Plans.
Yes. Do they allow anyone to go and show up at those meetings? Like you as a dentist, you're able to go and learn at those meetings as well?
Mm-hmm. You'll register as a non-member, but you're allowed to go.
Okay, so like guys like me and Ben can go and check those out.
If they'll let me in, they'll let anybody in.
Yeah, they'll let a guy like me in then. Okay, sweet.
Well, Dr. Roy,
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a pleasure having you on. I think this is one of the more important podcast series that we've done. Because it just seems like to me that the auditing is on the rise across the country.
No, it is.
And
yeah.
So if listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you for questions or inquire about what you do to help them out?
Email would be the best.
Okay. We're going to put that in the show notes, but if you don't mind just mentioning it on the air, that'd be great.
Sure. It's my name, ROI, with an underscore, Shelburne, SHELBURNE @hotmail.com.
Okay. So
I'll be happy to forward a copy of the 7-step compliance program and the FDA ADA justification for radiographs as well.
That would be great. And we also noticed that there's a phone number listed on your website. If anybody's interested, check out the show notes. It's royshelburne.com. But we'll also post all of that information, including his story, under the show notes, whether you're on iTunes, SoundCloud, or on our website directly. But Dr. Shelburne, thank you so much. This was enlightening, and it was awesome. And we truly hope that life is better for you, and we know that dealing with the law is not easy. Fortunately, at least Jordan and I haven't been there yet. Hopefully we'll never go down that path.
I hope so.
I can't imagine what you, your children, and your wife have gone through. And we're so happy that you're positive and you're upbeat and you're taking clients, and sounds like to me that your life is 10 times better, and that you're headed in the right direction in terms of the awesome education that you provide to prevent doctors going down that same path, or at least finding themselves down that same path, whether they do something wrong or not. So
yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.